Alright guys, so I'm going to talk about something real quick. The last session I ran with my party, we're currently playing through Lost Mines of Phandelver. We're in part 3, so if you haven't ran this and you want to play it as a player, click off the video, come back and watch it after you've played it. Hopefully you will. But there's some spoilers, but not major ones. This is all kind of side quest stuff, so it's nothing major to the story, other than maybe a piece of loot that you can find. So, spoiler alert out of the way. I want to talk about why you should bend the rules sometimes and follow the rule of cool. I know there's a lot of players out there and DMs that want to stick strictly to the books. That's what you know. That's what you've read through it front to back. You know how to play. You know how to DM. But especially when you're running the pre-written modules, that is assuming that you have certain class builds and whatnot that you don't have with your actual party that's playing, things can get a little hectic. And if I had followed the rules as written exactly, one of the coolest moments of this campaign so far would not have happened. I got my players excited, cheering, and that they still find as it's now become an inside joke. I mean, it was already kind of an inside joke with the player, but it's added to the fuel, and it's one of the best moments of the campaign so far. So, in I think it's part 2, the players will go through, this actually is a story spoiler, sort of, but in part 2, the players will go through the Red Brand hideout. And in the hideout, after they defeat Glassstaff or go through his quarters, I'm trying to find the page here that has it. I think it's in Glassstaff's quarters. Yeah. Let's see, where's the loot? Yeah, okay. Yes. So, in Glassstaff's quarters, if they kill him or they go through his stuff, whatever, they find a scroll of Fireball. This is the bane of all DMs. Everybody knows Fireball is intentionally overpowered for the fun of it. That's what my point is here. So Fireball is a wizard spell. Now, our bard ended up with this. Our party consists of a bard, a fighter, a barbarian, and a paladin. So no wizard, nobody can use this spell scroll if we go to rules as written. So if we flip to the back of the actual Phandelver book, which has all of the magic items that they can get in here, if we look at spell scroll, it says that the spell scroll bears the words of a single spell written in a mystical cipher. If the spell is on your class's spell list, you can use an action to read the spell scroll and cast a spell without having to provide any of the spell's components. Otherwise, the scroll is unintelligible. So, based on that, the bard, the paladin, the barbarian, and the fighter, no one is capable of using this item. I get that they could sell it, they could make some money, it's still loot. But part 3 rolls around a week later, and the players are at Wyvern Tor dealing with the orcs. There are a lot of orcs that spill out of this cave, especially because they did not kill the scout before you could alert them. So that means there's 6 orcs plus the scout orc, as I read it. So 7 orcs, one of which is increased HP orc, who has who's named Brugger Axebiter, and then an ogre, which also has a ton of hit points, named Gog. The party's 4 players, and our paladin has a tendency to die. But memes aside, Josh, they did not kill the lookout in time before he alerted everyone else. So everyone's spilling out of this cave. While they're spilling out of the cave, the bard asks if he can cast the scroll of Fireball. I'm like, okay, well, actually, I've never used a spell scroll before. I'm still a decently new DM. So I go back and I read that ruling that I just read you. So it'd be unintelligible. He would not be able to read it. But I also looked at the battle map and how many orcs are coming their way. And he had already decided where he wanted to place the fireball if he was allowed to cast it. And it would hit all but 1 orc, including the ogre. Everything. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This technically should not happen, should not be possible. But the players, if you follow the rule of cool, are going to very much enjoy the reaction of this fireball. So I said, okay, we'll cast it. I'll let you try. Still be the roll. Now, normally the DC to use a spell scroll would be 10 plus the spell's level. So that would be a 13 because it's Fireball's a level 3, a third level spell. He rolls exactly a 13. I didn't up it because he's a bard. I thought about it. Thought about adding 2 to it to make it a 15. I didn't. I decided to just keep it the same. We're just going to just forget that it's... I always looked at it... the way I looked at it is if you have the scroll that's how to cast it, we're going to count it as it's just kind of like a claymore set. Like it's you pop it open, it's ready to fire. It's loaded, it's ready to go. You don't need the components. It's loaded and ready to fire. So we went with it. He rolls insane damage, insta-kills everyone except the ogre, including the named ogre captain, Brugger. All but one orc is now dead, and and Gog, the ogre, is at like half health in one fireball. Nobody else has acted really yet in combat. I think that the orcs had spilled out and started to come towards them, but that was it. The players love it. They erupt. They're having a ball, loving it. Obviously, the last orc standing just watched his entire group burn, so he turns to try to flee. They pick him off before he actually gets out. And then the ogre comes up and puts up a little bit of a fight. I think he landed maybe one hit, if that. But they ended up finishing him off too. So this is supposed to be a decently hard fight, but because the players thought ahead, saved the scroll, and didn't sell it off when they could have sold off everything else, or when they did sell off everything else, rather, they had a way to deal with this big fight. And it ended up being a fun little experience for them. This is why you got to kind of bend the rules a little bit. Now, I'm not saying just do whatever your players want, rule of cool, everything. But once in a while, things like that, and if you disagree with it at your table, fine. But especially in a pre-written module. So this is written with the assumption that somebody's probably going to play a wizard. Somebody's going to have access to Fireball at some point. Somebody's going to be that magic user. Not my players, not this time. So that would have been then a useless item. It wouldn't have had any. It would have been sold a little bit of gold. And with my players, they loot everything, so they're fine on gold anyway because they're taking every piece of armor they can because they took a cart with them to load up with. Everything they can do to make as much money as they want or as they can possibly have. But it's one of the best moments now that they've had in the campaign, and that's from part 3 of Lost Mines of Phandelver is just side quests, pretty much. Other than Cragmaw Castle, which they haven't actually done yet. But that turned a section that was, let's see, 2 paragraphs here, just background. It starts here and ends here. That little bit of content in an entire module has now become one of the best parts that they've had. A throwaway little side quest, just a couple days travel, they end up with another encounter. All that turns into one of the best moments because I changed the ruling on a rule. Just, you got to play it by ear. Sometimes rule of cool is needed, and it can really, really enhance your player's time. That's all I got to say. I just had to talk about it. Sometimes great things like that can happen when you just throw the rules to the wind in a sense. I mean, it's just my ruling on it. You don't have to agree. I hope that this kind of gives you an idea of when to what reevaluating rulings can be. I believe it was Gary Gygax. One of his quotes was that it's the spirit of the game, not necessarily the rules as written, that's important. And I would say that definitely made the game an enjoyable moment for them. So that's all I gotta say for right now. If you guys enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. Maybe turn on notifications because I do upload occasionally, but it's not a regular schedule, so you're not going to know unless you click that little bell. But I appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time to listen to me ramble. And that's it. Thanks, guys. Remember, crit happens.